Hello everyone, this is Alan, and today we are back with a new video. So let's dig into it. So we were going through the book of Mark. So it goes like this: For whoever does the will of God, he is my brother and sister and mother. Mark chapter 3, verse 35. So it means that a strong relationship or bond transcends blood, right? Because if you have people around you which have the same ambitious goal, who are pursuing the same things as you, it is better to have those people around, because then you can have common grounds upon which you can have mutual discussions. It doesn't mean that you got to have the same views on things. It means that the foundation on which you act upon, let's say the basic principles and values, they are common, and those are the non-negotiables for a strong relationship. And it doesn't have to be the relationship upon which you are building your future does not have to be family, but can go beyond that. And sometimes there are cases where where the bonds that you have are much stronger than family or blood. So and it is very peculiar, because the notion has been such that the blood is stronger than any other stranger. But then again, how do you explain such relationships where the businesses are built on mutual trust and agreement, which are worth millions and billions of dollars? So there are things that we need to consider before we invest ourselves into a relationship, to see the if there is a common ground, if there are enough common grounds upon which you can act upon. Otherwise it just shambles and falls apart. So you can always try to fit into a group for a while, but then at the first, usually when you try to fit into a group, in the first meeting you get an idea if you're gonna do well there or not. Because what happens is, people usually try to get into a group and that doesn't really work out well for them, and they get an eerie feeling at first, but they say, but they want to give it a second chance again anyways. So what happens is, after the second and third meetings, they just get too comfortable and they are just too afraid to be alone. So at that moment, it's just taking what they have right in front of them. So if, let's say, if a person, if they really want a friend group to hang out with, and what has been presented to them, the friend group that they're hanging out with right now, probably they are not the best match, but they try to put on a mask to get along with them anyways. And that is useful to the extent where you really have to compromise, to the extent that it is useful, it is productive. But then it becomes unproductive when you really have to start compromising who you really are, right? And that's when the forward moving relationship, apparently at that point, is it when then that relationship in itself does not have a underlying bond, true bond, right? There is no bond then, because all you're doing is just acting enough to just fit in that group, just because you're afraid to be alone. So, and I see that people doing all the time, and that doesn't really work out really well. All the successful relationships that I've seen, they are built on mutual trust and integrity, 100%. So let's say if you're a person who is unsociable, so you got to have to find people who are like you. So, and don't think that you're the only person who is just like you, because it might be the case that you haven't met enough people. So if you just go around and meet enough people, the probability of you meeting someone who is similar to you, well, but also might have different views, which is actually particularly useful, so that they can shed light on, or let's say they can fill the knowledge gaps, right? It is useful to have a person around like that. But then if the person is completely opposite to you, then it is very difficult to establish a relationship. And In the Bible it says, and he says to them, whenever you enter a house, stay there until you depart from there. Any and if anyone will not receive you, and they will not listen to you, when you leave, shake off the dust that is on your feet as a testimony against them. Mark chapter 6 verses 10 to 11. That's it. So basically, let's say if you go into a friend group and if they don't accept your core message, what you have to tell, what you have gained from your experience, and might be the case that you're wrong, but if it is something that is really useful and they refuse to listen to it and they just want to go about their own way and they don't really provide you with enough respect to hear your words, it's better to just pull back. All you're doing is just disrespecting yourself in that company, right? And people do that all the time, and I understand the reasoning behind it, because we as human beings are social animals, so we like company, but the cost at which it comes is the compromise of what your real values and principles are, and that, according to me, is not worth giving up. Because like I said, it is better to just go around and find people who are similar to you, and there are plenty. It's just you haven't met them because you haven't really gone about or concentrated on making such relationships, but there are. Or there are several factors, or you might be too busy to form such connections. But then it is also true that if you just made the time and went around, the probability of you meeting people who are acting on the same principles and values are you are go up way higher. And that's worth doing, because then you don't have to do all the work alone, and then things that might take 10 years you can always complete in five years, because there's two of you now. And if it's three, it only would take third of the time. And if there are four of you, then it only takes 25% of the total time that it would take for a single person to complete the whole work or achieve that goal, whatever you're pursuing. So, and the thing is that maybe it might be the case that you don't have much to offer, but then that can be worked upon too. Because what happened is, in the Bible, Jesus actually had a lot of followers, so they followed him everywhere that he went. And now Jesus was upset that the followers haven't had eaten in days, because they were following Jesus and listening to what he was saying. So he asked his disciples how much food they had, and the disciples said they have got 5 loaves of bread and 2 pieces of fish, which is not enough for 5,000 people. So what Jesus did was he did a miracle. He produced more. He multiplied the food that they had, enough for 5,000 people to eat. And in the Bible says that they had enough food and 5,000 people could eat it and they were satisfied. Can be also, so what we can also see that is, whatever how much you have, even if you have very less, you can always develop that skill or talent that you have to the next echelon of mastery. That's a good way of putting at it, right? So let's say if you think that you are just a bit good at, let's say, painting, and then what you have is a bit of an aptitude towards that particular skill. So inevitably, if you just spend enough time on mastering such a skill, you can actually end up be the master of that skill, and that can serve hundreds and thousands of people. Because let's say if a person who is really good at diagnosis, right? Probably they were a doctor, like every doctor was a novice once. So what they did is they practiced and practiced and practiced, and now once you are a competent doctor, what you have is what would serve hundreds and thousands of people, and that is worth pursuing. So just don't belittle what you have, and just keep on developing, and don't get resentful when you see people who have already mastered that skill, because it is an invalid comparison anyways. There is always going to be someone better than you, and probably that's good, because then you have something or someone to look up to, right? So you can form them as your ideal, as someone that you would like to be, and in the pursuit of that you will achieve mastery in whatever skill that you're pursuing. Well guys, thank you for the opportunity. I'll see you next week.